Hello and welcome to the 2025 VEX V5 Robotics Competition Maine State Championship. This will be our driver's briefing. Obviously this year it is pre-recorded to save time on Saturday. There will also be a live driver's briefing on Friday at 3:30. It'll be live streamed to the Robotics Institute of Maine's YouTube channel. Please pay attention when that time comes around. That'll be February 28th. Please watch that video so you can have any of your questions answered. I'll cover most of our topics today. Here to help me with that is Zach McDaniel. He is one of our scorekeepers at States. So let's get into this. First off, we're going to have our queuing flow here. So the orange line is going to be our high school field, and the pink line is our middle school. If you've been to States, you know this flow. It's the same as last year. Just make sure you're going from the pits to the side door for the auditorium. Do not go through the main walkway for all the spectators. You will exit through those two walkways, but just follow the flow to the side door up to the queuing tables. Same goes for middle school. Make sure you go check in with the queuing table before you head to the field.
Here now we have some important reminders for this event. We have a tight schedule to keep to, so please be on time for your matches. If you are not ready to go when you're scheduled to start, you'll be asked to remove your robot from the field and we will start without you. Lunch break is going to start at 12 p.m. and will last for 40 minutes. Please be on time for when we resume matches. For the elimination brackets, the middle school division will be joining the high school division in the auditorium. Starting after quarterfinals, we will be handing out awards between matches. Please stick around in case you get an award. So Hunter, what's the most important rule in the V5RC competitions?
So the most important rule to me is G1, which is treat everybody with respect. All teams are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner while competing in the VEX V5 Robotics competition. So this is stuff like saying your teammate is bad, saying the opponent is bad, making fun of your opponents, throwing things down in anger. It's just treat it with respect. Treat all the spectators, volunteers, staff members, and your teammates and opponents with respect. You can get DQ'd for this rule, and I don't want to have to do that with anybody at this event.
And here are some quick rule reminders as well.
G8 is only drivers and only in the Alliance stations. This means keep your 3 drive team members up with you. I don't want anybody else from your team coming up to the field with you. They need to stay in the spectator area. In the same rule is Part D of G8. You are not allowed earbuds unless you have a signed, officially approved accommodation request. Then you are allowed to have your earbuds. Your phones are allowed, but they must be on airplane mode at the field. S4 is where your safety glasses. This is a really simple rule. Just keep safety glasses on, and we will send you back to the pits to go get them if you are missing them. G9 is keep your hands outside the field. Obviously in the match, you might be ranging to go, hey, go do this, go grab that. You just need to keep your hand outside the field. Like above the field is still considered in the field, so just keep your hands in your driver's station. Similarly is G10. Make sure you keep your remote plugged in until the match is over. The scorekeepers will give you the all clear to unplug and reset and grab your robots. Until that point, please leave your remote plugged in. G13 is to don't destroy other robots, but prepare to encounter defense. So this game, high stakes, is a competitive game. Will be contact. Be ready for that. You shouldn't be getting upset if another robot bumps into you and something falls off. It's going to happen. There will be contact. Make sure you've built your robots in a way that can handle minor contact. Obviously, egregious violation of this rule can be penalties, but in most cases, contact with robots is not going to be a penalty. One last thing for our sake, for the competition's sake, leave all of the rings in the field. These are really easy to end up in your robot, in your intake. Just make sure you check your robot before you leave. Make sure you put all the rings back on the field.
So is this game any different for states?
So the only difference between a high-stakes qualification event and a state championship is the autonomous win point. The autonomous win point category and criteria is a little bit different for states. For any rules qualifying event, so signature events, regional championships, and anything like that. So you got to have at least 4 rings scored of your Alliance color. 3 stakes on your Alliance side of the field have to have at least 1 ring on them of your color. At least 1 ring of the Alliance color scored on your Alliance wall stake, so your red or blue stake is right in front of your driver station. Neither robot can be on the starting line, so you have to move it off the starting line to account, and at least one robot has to be contacting the ladder. Those last 2 points have not changed from a normal autonomous win point, but just keep that in mind. You gotta score a couple more rings and on dip more stakes than you used to get the win point for states.
Can you clarify what it means for a ring to be considered scored?
Yes, so the way a ring is considered scored, so if I were to take 2 planes on the side of this ring, that interior volume, which ends up being like an hourglass, that empty volume in here in between my 2 hands, that any part of the stake that is in there, this means the ring is considered scored. The stake is defined as this pole and the flexible barb on the top. So what that means is if you have a ring that does that, and only the barb is inside that interior volume, that ring is considered scored. So if a robot ends a match holding a ring like that, that ring is still considered scored because it is in that interior volume of that ring. So we know our normal, these rings are obviously scored. That is still scored. Anything like that is still scored because the stake is in that interior volume of that ring.
And where do I place my robot to start a match?
So placing a robot is defined in SG1. To start a match, you got to have your robot contacting or breaking the plane of the alliance's starting line. That will be highlighted in this graphic. You can't be contacting any scoring objects except your run preload ring, red or blue depending what alliance you are. You cannot contact your teammate robot or any other robot, and you must be completely stationary. Obviously, no motors running, no pneumatics running, or anything like that.
How many preloads does each robot get?
So each robot is allowed one singular preload, one red or one blue, depending who you are. Obviously, there will be 2 per alliance color. Has to be contacting your robot. It cannot be contacting another preload, and it can't be contacting a stake or any other scoring object. If you are not at the field, if you end up with a no-show robot or your robot's broken, and you just have a team representative there, it will be placed on the field in your starting area.
And what happens if a ring falls out of the field? Is it an automatic penalty?
So rings falling in the field is something that we sort of expect to happen in this game. With the wall stakes being over the wall, if you happen to miss one and it falls out of the field, it's not a penalty if you're knocking your own ring out of the field. There is no penalty for that. If a ring does fall out of the field, it'll be placed in your driver station, contacting the wall in your driving area, and not contacting anything else. No robots, no other rings, no other mobile goals, or anything like that. It cannot be in the corner. There is a penalty if you knock a ring of your opponent's color outside the field. So, if you knock, let's say I'm a red robot and this blue ring falls outside the field, it'll be a minor violation for each ring you knock outside the field. That is defined in a Q&A. So if you do it 3 times in one match, that will be a major violation and therefore a DQ. But keep in mind those minor violations will carry over. So if you have one minor violation in one match, and then you do knock one ring out of the field in the next match, and then you do it in the third match, after that, you get 3 strikes. After that, it'll be a DQ from that point forward. So you have 3 strikes of knocking an opponent's ring inside the field, and then it'll be a DQ. So be very careful when you're descoring, especially if you're trying to descore a neutral wall stake. That is where this is most likely to happen. It can also happen if you're shoving a mobile goal into the corner and a ring pops out the top of the field. That is still your action that caused that and will be a minor violation on your robot.
And what happens if my autonomous program messes up and my robot crosses the autonomous line?
So that is SG7. Don't cross the autonomous line. So the autonomous line is that double tape line in the middle of the field. You are allowed to hover over that line. You may not contact the foam tiles or anything else that is fully contained on that side of the field. So the rings that are already placed on the autonomous line are considered on top of the autonomous line. That 4 stack in the middle there, all of those are considered on the autonomous line, so you are allowed to contact those. Now to go into more detail on what is considered crossing line, not crossing line, you're allowed to hover over here like I highlighted with these good images here. You're allowed to hover over, you just cannot contact the tile on the other side of the line. We'll be watching for this. We have a couple of scorekeepers and myself or another header for you will be watching it. So just be careful if your autonomous program goes and tries to grab those rings on the line. Just be very careful. Make sure your program is running good. And we'll be all set.
And if my robot starts climbing, is it protected? And if so, at what point does that protection start?
So yes, SG9, your robot is protected if it starts climbing. Your climbing robots are protected, so you're not allowed to remove your opponent from the ladder. That protection, however, only applies once your robot meets the definition of climb, or a climbing robot, which is defined as soon as a robot mechanism is reacting against two different faces of the ladder rung, that is considered climbing. So if your robot is resting against the side of the ladder rung, that is not considered climbing. You're still allowed to defend a robot that is contacting the ladder, but as soon as it starts grabbing onto the ladder, contacting multiple faces, that is the point they are now protected and you should not be contacting them.
And how many scoring objects can I possess?
So SG6 defines possession as 2 rings and 1 mobile goal.
How is possession defined?
So possession is defined in the rulebook as any scoring object that is being fully supported by your robot, like basically being picked up by your robot, moving around, and as soon as it's being contacted by multiple faces of your robot in a concave surface, that is defined as possession. So that can come into play when you're cleaning those rings out of the positive or negative corner. It also applies the really, really simple way of defining possession is if your robot turns, a scoring object turns with you, that is defined as possession.
Are there any important exceptions to SG6?
So there is a very, very important exception to SG6. 2, to be clear, rings scored on a stake like we have here, those don't count towards your count of 2 rings. If I have a robot, I have this stake and this ring, this is fine. I'm not in violation because these ones on the stake don't count towards that limit. The other important exception to SG6 is SG6B, which is defined as plowing multiple goals is permitted. However, plowing an additional mobile goal while you already have possession of 1 is a violation. This has caught out a lot of teams this year. So if you have 1 mobile goal in your clamp, like a lot of robots have this year, once you have 1 in your clamp and are moving it around, you cannot plow another mobile goal. There's a brief allowance for like momentary contact that doesn't affect anything. But if you are moving another mobile goal while you have 1 in your clamp already, that is a violation of SG6. It can really, really easily become a major violation in DQ. It's defined in the rulebook very bluntly by a red box that says, if your robot is carrying a mobile goal, you can't manipulate other mobile goals until you put down the one you're carrying, period.
What are the major changes from the last game update?
So the biggest one from the last update was a change to SG11. That's the rule talking about positive corners during the end game. The end game is defined as the last 30 seconds of the match now. Previously it was 15, now it is 30. So during the last 30 seconds of a match, a robot may not contact a mobile goal that's placed in the corner, may not add one, it may not remove one from the corner. You also may not contact any rings that are on a scored mobile goal. It's not just contact with a mobile goal, it's contact with rings that are also on that mobile goal. So be very, very careful in the last 30 seconds of a match. If you contact a mobile goal in the corner and it changes the status of what that goal is, whether or not that goal is placed or not placed, that can really easily be a violation and will be a violation and can easily stack towards a major violation. So be very, very careful in the last 30 seconds of the match in the positive corners. I don't want to DQ any more teams that I have already this year for this rule.
What about skills? What differences are there from a normal competition match?
So skills, there are a couple of different changes. Obviously, the big ones are we're playing as the Red Alliance here. Obviously, all your drive team members must be in the Red Alliance station during this rule. SG1 still applies, SG5 still applies, so 1 preload in your starting position is the same as if you were on the Red Alliance. Important difference here, there are red and blue rings on the skills field. 4 skills. Blue rings may only be scored as top rings on a stake. Each blue ring only has a point value if it meets the following criteria, which of course the first one is all the red rings have to be scored and have point values. At least 1 red ring has to be below a blue ring to be scored. So in this case, let's assume all our reds have been scored. This would be a legal position for a blue ring, but as soon as there is a red ring on top here, that red ring does not have a point value, which also means no ring on the stake will be considered a top ring. So this stake here only gets points for 1 red ring because there is no top ring and blues can only be considered top rings. The other important thing, there are no positive or negative corners in skills. For skills, every corner is considered the same, and if there's a mobile goal placed in that corner, they'll be worth 5 points each.
Skills will be running from when qualification matches start to when qualification matches end. The skills field will promptly close at the same time as the last qualification match. At that time, only the current skills run on the field will be able to complete their attempt. All others will be turned away. Each team has a maximum of 3 attempts for driver skills and 3 attempts for autonomous skills. Any rules violation that improves your score in a skills run will result in a submitted score of 0 for that attempt. After a skills attempt, your team is responsible for helping to reset the field. Let's answer some of the questions that were submitted on the form. If you are stuck in the positive corner as it becomes protected, do you leave and get the violation or stay and get the violation?
So this is referring again to SG11. This is a case where a robot has, let's say, drifted into the corner right at 30 seconds and ends up contacting a mobile goal when the buzzer sounds to signify that protection starting. So in this point, you've already violated the rule. You're in the corner at 30 seconds. So I've talked with a couple other head refs, and what we've come to is it's better to stay contacting that goal. The reason being is if you were to leave and cause that goal to change status, that could really easily be a major violation. So in our opinion, it's safer to stay in the corner contacting that goal than to accidentally get a major violation. You're going to get a violation either way because you've broken the rule, but it's safer to not risk the major violation.
And if a robot has the goal in their clamp and pushes an empty goal for 1 second or less, will SG6 be called for disqualification?
So SG6, it's up to the head referee's opinion of whether something was egregious or intentional or anything like that. Match affecting is defined, but pushing an empty mobile goal is probably not match affecting, but it'd be up to the head referee's decision of whether or not it was intentional or egregious. Pushing an empty goal for 1 second is probably not egregious and probably not intentional. So in most cases, this be a minor violation. And you can also look at Q&A 2363 for more information on this.
And speaking of SG6, how strict will you be about SG6's rules?
So for states, obviously we're going to be more strict than a level competition. And again, it all depends on the context of a match. I can't give a blanket statement for how strict it will be or whatnot, but it'll be more strict than a local competition, I will say.
Will you disqualify teams for nudging or momentarily pushing a second mobile goal, or is it just a warning?
So back to what we said earlier, it all depends on the context of a match. And it's up to my decision and this, with input from scorekeepers of whether or not it was egregious or purely intentional. So like we said, it really depends on the context of the match, like how many riggers were on there, where were you pushing it, did they get pushed into a corner, things like that. But if it was not match affecting, not strategic, not egregious, not clear intentional, it will be most likely a minor violation.
And lastly, could you maybe clarify the rule about mobile goals base to be in corners?
So this is SC5. We're talking about getting one of these mobile goals into the corner. So there are 3 points for SC5. First point being this base here has to be touching the tiles. It doesn't have to be touching the tiles in the corner. It has to be touching the tiles anywhere on the field. Point 2 is this bar up here has to be above the wall. So basically the goal has to be upright. And the third point is the goal has to break the plane of the field, of that tape line on the field. That is the outer edge of the tape line, meaning the more into the middle of the field side of the tape line has to break. So those are the 3 points of SC5. So what that does mean, if the goal is on its side like this, that is not considered placed in the corner because it is not upright and this barb is not above the wall. So that brings us to the end of our driver's briefing for 2025. There will be a form, as I've said, for any questions you might still have. Please go ahead and fill that out. It'll be up on the screen. So any questions you have there, I will answer at our live driver's briefing on Friday. It'll be February 28th. That'll be at 3:30. It'll be on the Robotics Institute of Maine's YouTube channel. Please go watch that when that comes out. It'll be also live in person. So if you are coming Friday, you will be able to join us in the auditorium for that. So thank you, Zach, for coming and joining me here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for Bow High School for giving us this space to use to film.